would like to invite us all to take about 10 minutes before we do our mindfulness trainings recitation, the 5 mindfulness trainings recitation. Take about 10 minutes to sit quietly and really let fall away everything that is not needed in this moment. Fully and truly arrive in the here, in the now. If your here and now feels groggy and sleepy, arrive there. If it feels bright or anxious, or arrive there. But let's settle into right where we are fully. If you feel calm and concentrated, wonderful. Settle into your calm more and your concentration more. If you feel dispersed, start there. Really be where we are and let fall away everything else. All striving, all longing, let it all fall away. Breathing in, I'm aware that I'm breathing in, and breathing out, I'm aware that I am breathing out. I breathe in and out, aware of my body. I breathe in and out, feeling, sensing. I breathe in and out, and in that space I see thoughts arising, striving, longing to understand, to figure out, to solve. I breathe in and out, and I am aware that I, myself, am a part of this world, that my body is interwoven with the bodies of all other living beings, and my feelings are the continuation and transformation of all other feelings, that my thoughts are the thoughts of the world, and that the world and I have very soft boundaries between us. Breathing in, I'm aware that I'm breathing in breath. And breathing out, I'm aware that I'm breathing out. Out breath. Good morning, dear community. So our first activity this morning together is a recitation of the 5 mindfulness trainings. If you have had the mindfulness trainings, if you have them on paper or in a book, it might be nice to have them with you now, but it's not necessary, as they will be read by members of the Sangha, so we can listen to those words when that moment comes. To my understanding, there are 5 members of our community who will read the trainings when we get there. Diane, Donna, Jackie, Eric, and Robin. So for those 5 of you, please have your copies handy. So this recitation ceremony will be very simple, and with our practice wholehearted and sincere. We'll have a little bit of chanting at the beginning, the opening verses, and the sutra on the insight that brings us to the other shore. If this is a chant that you're familiar with, please keep your microphone muted so that it doesn't sound too crazy online. But you're welcome to chant along with me. And if you're not familiar, simply breathing and being present through that chant is plenty. After we chant the sutra, there will be some opening words introducing the mindfulness trainings, and then one by one they will be read, and after each one I will ask a question and we'll have a moment to quietly reflect on how we're relating to that training in this moment of our life. And recently, have we been able to bring that mindfulness training into our life in any way, or have we felt like we've come up short? And it's just a moment to reflect, as if you were looking in the mirror and seeing yourself, saying, wow, oh, that's what I look like right now, right? And it's that kind of a moment to see your practice in relationship to this very high ideal that the mindfulness trainings put before us. And at the end of the reading of the 5 and those moments of reflection for the 5, there's some closing words, and then we'll be done. The mindfulness trainings are set out as a tool for us in our practice, much like if you were navigating the oceans before there were modern tools to help you, you would have looked to the skies for the stars, and perhaps in the northern hemisphere you would base your experience of where you are off of where the stars were in the sky. And if you could find the North Star, because it barely moves at all in the sky, if you know where the North Star is, then you know which direction is north. Because you know that, you know what direction you're going, right? And we don't try to get to the North Star, but because the North Star is there, we know which direction is which, right? And the mindfulness trainings are like that. They are a picture of one of the ways, or perhaps many of the ways, that it might look were we to really embody the practice of mindfulness in our daily lives. We might practice like they say, like the words of the training say. And when we undertake that practice of the mindfulness trainings, when we commit to live in that way, it doesn't mean that we're just following the rules or the delineations that are laid out by the mindfulness trainings. Do this, don't do that. It means that we have that ideal, that picture, like the North Star in the sky, always there. And we rely on it to know where we are. It means that the actions we undertake in our daily life are guided by a common vision of mindfulness and compassion in the world. a vision shared by many, many of us. And we are all striving to move beautifully in the world. And the trainings help us to see where we are in any particular moment. So a recitation like this is sort of a more formal moment for us to stop and say, hey, how am I doing? How's my practice going? And you can recite and read and study the trainings any day. You don't have to wait for the Sangha recitation or a transmission ceremony. The more we do that, the more they become a guiding light for us, and something that we can find great support in as we meet the various complexities and challenges of our daily life. All of the trainings contain in their first sentences the core teachings of the Buddhist path of practice. In fact, in the first one sentence or two sentences, you find all four noble truths laid out beautifully. Right? Aware of the suffering that comes about because of X, Y, and Z. Right? That's the suffering is our first noble truth, and the causes of suffering, the roots of suffering, are the second noble truth. It's right there. Aware of the suffering brought about when we act like this or we say that. Right? Then I am determined, right, to go in a good direction and to cultivate something wholesome, which are the third and the fourth noble truth. Right? So right there in the very beginning of all the trainings, aware of the suffering caused by this, I am determined to go on a beautiful path and to cultivate these other energies, these other virtues that will transform that experience of suffering. The path of well-being and the way, well-being and the path of well-being. Right? So all of it is right there, and these trainings are very practical and sometimes very challenging and sometimes a little bit awkward. And that's all right. It's never going to be a perfect expression of a perfectly mindful life. So if you hear these words and you kind of go, I don't know, does that sound quite right? That's fine, right? It's out there in front of us to help us learn and grow, and not to be something that we attain or we identify as this is me, right? Or this is not me. Yeah. So here we go into our ceremony. I will be inviting the bell and then starting the chants. Please be comfortable. Find your breathing. The Dharma is deep and lovely. We now have a chance to see, study, and to practice practice it. We vow to realize its true meaning. The insight that brings us to the other shore. Avalokiteshvara, while practicing deeply with the insight that brings us to the other shore, suddenly discovered that all of the five skandhas are equally empty, and with this realization she overcame all ill being. Listen, Shariputra, this body itself is emptiness, and emptiness itself is this body. This body is not other than emptiness, and emptiness is not other than this body. The same is true of feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. Listen, Shariputra, all phenomenon bear the mark of emptiness. Their true nature is the nature of no birth, no death, no being, no non-being, no defilement, no purity, no increasing, no decreasing. That is why in emptiness body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness are not separate self-entities. The 18 realms of phenomenon, which are the 6 sense organs, 6 sense objects, and 6 consciousnesses, are also not separate self-entities. The 12 links of interdependent arising and their extinction are also not separate self-entities. Ill-being, the causes of ill-being, the end of ill-being, the path, insight, and attainment are also not separate self-entities. Whoever can see this no longer needs anything to attain. Bodhisattvas who practice the insight that brings us to the other shore see no more obstacles in their minds, and because there are no more obstacles in their mind, they can overcome all fear, destroy all wrong perceptions, and realize perfect nirvana. All Buddhas in the past, present, and future, by practicing the insight that brings us to the other shore, are all capable of attaining authentic and perfect enlightenment. Therefore, Sariputra, it should be known that the insight that brings us to the other shore is a great mantra, the most illuminating mantra, the highest mantra. A mantra beyond compare, the true wisdom that has the power to put an end to all kinds of suffering. Therefore let us proclaim a mantra to praise the insight that brings us to the other shore. Gate gate bara gate bara samgate bodhisattva. Gate bara gate bara samgate bodhisattva. Gate bara gate bara samgate bodhisattva. Dear community, we are gathered this morning in this particular session to make a recitation of the 5 mindfulness trainings. Many of us present have made the commitment to bring the mindfulness trainings into our daily lives. And whether we have undertaken that commitment formally or not, our aspiration to live mindfully and compassionately is true and dear. The 5 mindfulness trainings have the capacity to protect life, to help make it beautiful, to encourage us in the direction of peace, of joy, liberation, and awakening. To practice the trainings is to cultivate the insight of interbeing and to bring that insight to life in all the activities of each day. The insight of interbeing can remove all discrimination, intolerance, anger, fear, and despair. And if practiced well, the mindfulness trainings can be a foundation for healing, transformation, and happiness in our own lives, but also in the lives of our family, society, and our relationship with the earth. The trainings will now be read one by members of the community around you. Please listen with a calm and a clear mind. After each reading, there will be a pause for reflection, and we'll ask the question about how you have been able to bring this training into your life. Please breathe and reflect during those quiet moments without judgment, without shame, without arrogance, simply to see, how am I doing in relation to the practice presented here? Sisters and brothers, we will now read the mindfulness trainings. The first mindfulness training.
Reverence for life. Aware of the suffering caused by the destruction of life, I am committed to cultivating the insight of interbeing and compassion, and learning ways to protect the lives of people, animals, plants, and minerals. I am determined not to kill, not to let others kill, and not to support any act of killing in the world, in my thinking or in my way of life. Seeing that harmful actions arise from anger, fear, greed, and intolerance, which in turn come from dualistic and discriminative thinking, I will cultivate openness, non-discrimination, and non-attachment to views in order to transform violence, fanaticism, and dogmatism in myself and in the world.
Dear community, this is the first of the 5 mindfulness trainings. Please take a moment to reflect on your practice of this training in recent days, weeks, and months. The second mindfulness training.
True happiness. Aware of the suffering caused by exploitation, social injustice, stealing, and oppression, I am committed to practicing generosity in my thinking, speaking, and acting. I am determined not to steal and not to possess anything that should belong to others, and I will share my time, energy, and material resources with those who are in need. I will practice looking deeply to see the happiness and suffering of others are not separate from my own happiness and suffering. But true happiness is not possible without understanding and compassion, and that running after wealth, fame, power, and sensual pleasures can bring much suffering and despair. I am aware that the happiness depends on my mental attitude and not on external conditions, and that I can live happily in the present moment simply by remembering that I already have enough conditions to be happy. I am committed to practicing right livelihood so that I can help reduce the suffering of living beings on Earth and stop contributing to climate change.
This is the second of the 5 mindfulness trainings. Dear community, please take a moment to reflect on how you have been able to practice this training in recent days, weeks, and months. The third mindfulness training.
True love. Aware of the suffering caused by sexual misconduct, I'm committed to cultivating responsibility and learning ways to protect the safety and integrity of individuals, couples, families, and society. Knowing that sexual desire is not love and that sexual activity motivated by craving always harms myself as well as others, I'm determined not to engage in sexual relations without true love and a deep, long-term commitment made known to my family and friends. I will do everything in my power to protect children from sexual abuse and to prevent couples and families from being broken by sexual misconduct. Seeing that body and mind are one, I'm committed to learning appropriate ways to take care of my sexual energy and cultivating loving kindness, compassion, joy, and inclusiveness, which are the four basic elements of true love, for my greater happiness and the greater happiness of others. Practicing true love, we know that we will continue beautifully into the future.
Dear community, this is the third of the 5 mindfulness trainings. Please take a moment to reflect on your practice of this training in recent days, weeks, and months. The fourth mindfulness training.
Loving speech and deep listening. Aware of the suffering caused by unmindful speech and the inability to listen to others, I am committed to cultivating loving speech and compassionate listening in order to relieve suffering and to promote reconciliation and peace in myself and among other people, ethnic, and religious groups and nations. Knowing that words can create happiness or suffering, I am committed to speaking truthfully, using words that inspire confidence, joy, and hope. When anger is manifest in me, I am determined not to speak. I will practice mindful breathing and walking in order to recognize and to look deeply into my anger. I know that the roots of anger can be found in my wrong perceptions and lack of understanding of the suffering in myself and the other person. I will speak and listen in a way that can help myself and the other person to transform suffering and see the way out of difficult situations. I'm determined not to spread news that I do not know to be certain, and not to utter words that can cause division or discord. I will practice right diligence to nourish my capacity for understanding, love, joy, and inclusiveness, and gradually transform anger, violence, and fear that lie deep in my consciousness.
Dear community, this is the fourth of the 5 mindfulness trainings. Please take this moment to reflect on your practice of the fourth mindfulness training in recent days, weeks, and months. fifth mindfulness training.
Nourishment and healing. Aware of the suffering caused by unmindful consumption. I am committed to cultivating good health, both physical and mental, for myself, my family, and my society, by practicing mindful eating, drinking, and consuming. I will practice looking deeply into how I consume the 4 kinds of nutriments, namely edible foods, sense impressions, volition, and consciousness. I am determined not to gamble or to use alcohol, drugs, or any other products which contain toxins, such as certain websites, electronic games, TV programs, films, magazines, books, and conversations. I will practice coming back to the present moment to be in touch with the refreshing, healing, and nourishing elements in me and around me. Not letting regrets and sorrow drag me back into the past, nor letting anxieties, fear, or craving pull me out of the present moment. I am determined not to try to cover up loneliness, anxiety, or other suffering by losing myself in consumption. I will contemplate, intervene, and consume in a way that preserves peace, joy, and well-being in my body and consciousness, and in the collective body and consciousness of my family, my society, and the earth.
Dear community, this is the 5th of the 5 mindfulness trainings. Please take a moment to reflect on your practice of this training in recent days, weeks, and months. Dear friends, we have recited the 5 mindfulness trainings. The trainings are a wonderful practice that can be a foundation for happiness in ourselves, our families, and society. And the trainings can also be the basis for our energy and aspiration to be of service to others. Please be sure to carry awareness of the trainings into the different moments of your daily life so that they can help to guide you and help you to find the most beautiful way. Please remember to continue to learn, study, and recite them either on your own or with the Sangha when it gathers for such readings. We'll now close with the chanting of the closing verses. Transmitting the... Sorry, let me do that again. I'm reading from a transmission text. Reciting the trainings, practicing the way of awareness, gives rise to benefits without limit. We vow to share the fruits with all beings. We vow to offer tribute to parents, teachers, friends, numerous beings who give guidance and support along the path. Thank you, dear friends, for holding that space together this morning. Thank you, dear readers, for reading so steadily and clearly.